Gil here with Sailing Vessel Dream Chaser, and yesterday we took last affair out, the 43-foot Gulfstar. We anchored up with some friends. It was a nice day out on the water, but unfortunately, I've been having some problems with the starter solenoid from the time we had the trip back from Kima to New Orleans, and it acted up on me again yesterday. I think what's happening is, the way a starter works, you have a giant flywheel on the back of the motor, and it's got teeth on it, right? And there's a small gear that shoots out of the starter and engages with that. And my starter is just making this noise going zzz. It's a whizzing sound. I think what's happening is this is spinning. It's just not firing. Well, it actually spins this way. It's just not firing and engaging into those teeth on the flywheel. So because I've had that problem, and I've had the problem with the starter solenoid, sometimes the key doesn't work. I've had to jumper it from the start place down below, actually jumper the back of the solenoid. I'm going to go ahead and pull the entire starter off and see if we can go ahead and get it replaced. So I'm sitting down here in the edge of the engine room, and I got my trusty little light on because in a few moments it is going to be dark in here. I turned the light back on in the engine room, but once I disconnect the batteries, which I will do before I start pulling that heavy gauge wire right off the back of the starter, it's going to be dark in here. So I've got my little headlight to hopefully be able to see what the heck I'm doing, and I'm really hoping I can get most of the bolts out of the starter before I actually have to disconnect the electricity in here, so I can get the lights, keep the lights on as long as possible. So away we go. Here's my hands now. I suspect at some point later they'll be bloody because I know I'm going to beat them into something down here. There's no good room to get to this, and it's better than a lot of other ones. I mean, frankly, the fact that I'm kind of sitting in the engine room tells me there's room in here, but between the air conditioner pump, the engine row strainer, the heat exchanger, the heat exhaust manifold going out to the water muffler, it's all kind of right in the way, and I got to reach around it in a couple different directions. So I will probably be doing some gymnastics over the top of all this, and away we go. There. The upper one and the one right below it are the two that I would jumper to go ahead and start this. So. Alright, I've now disconnected the batteries with the main cutoff. And I'm going to do the same test, see if I don't have voltage. I want to make sure it's running through this. You never know with an old boat. So before I cause a problem, you'll soon know. Alright, so the good news is I've got the power off in the boat. I'm down in the engine room. I did test the voltage on the top side of the starter solenoid to make sure that when my main battery switch selector is set to off, that it truly is off, right? It's an old boat, you just don't know what somebody wired before. So I verified that's the case. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to disconnect the main power source, the big 00 cable from the top of the starter solenoid, and remove all the connections to it so that when I disconnect all of the bolts, I'll be able to pull the starter right out of there. The reason I'm doing this now is I'm hoping that by taking those wires off and taping them and protecting them from shorting, I'll be able to turn the battery selector switch back on in the boat, and I'll be able to have lights in here where I can actually see what I'm doing, which will be a lot easier. And it would also be easier once I get the bolts out to already have the wires disconnected, because it's probably going to be a bit of an interesting task of removing the starter from where it is. I have two choices. I can try and work it sort of up sideways between the engine and this sort of wall we built in here for the holding tanks, or I can try and drop it into the bilge below the engine and reach below and grab it. I do have a little bit of water and whatnot in the bilge, so I'd like not to do that, but that's kind of the place I'm faced with right now. So away we go. Let's see if you can see this here. What I'm really working at doing is getting this top nut off. So I've already loosened it. I'm going to go ahead and remove this one right here. And this is the main 12-volt power in. So right now I am actually taking the large nut off for the large double-aught line that carries the 12 volts to the starter itself. It's really tough to get the camera in and see exactly where we're getting there, but I'm loosening that up now and taking that wire off.
And you can see now I'm actually pulling the second ring terminal off, and notice that this is very loose, this nut.
That could certainly be part of the problem.
It was a little bit tough to show this. I have a small handheld socket, and I'm trying to figure out how to work my hands into the right place here to loosen up the ignition terminal. Essentially the yellow and red striped is what it typically is on most starters. In this case it was yellow. It goes to the smaller of the leads on the back side of the starter solenoid, but I did finally find an angle where I could get my hand in here to loosen it up a little bit. Alright, so we are moving this other wire here, the yellow wire, from this side. We got to rip the bolt off, or nut off. So I'm now going to remove this yellow wire, and I've been putting tape around these so if for some reason they get current, they don't short against anything. So this is the kind of gymnastics I was sort of referring to, right? Got one arm over the top of the head, the other one reaching around the heat exhaust mixing elbow. So we're working on getting the bolts off. Alright, so here's the other starter bolt. This is the second one. Got the top one off already. This is the inner one. I believe there's either either one or two more below. So I've got the 9/16 wrench on the back side and a 5/8 socket on the front, and there we go. And now it's just a matter of continuing to remove the bolts. The bottom one was actually the toughest one. There's only 3 bolts that hold the starter on. All in all, it really wasn't bad to get these off. I could have done better on the order here, which you'll hear about in just a second. All right, I've got the third one out, and what I did was I took the top ones out, which was a mistake. I just put one of the top ones back in finger tight so that I could at least get to this one a little easier, not have to hold the starter up, keep it from falling at the same time. So, you see if this is the last one or if there's another one after this. I'm not sure. Feels like that's the last one. The starter is kind of laying down on this beam for a minute. I have this piece here. I'm not sure what this is. I don't want it to fall out of there, so I'm going to very carefully lift this up, and I'm going to try and lift this side up first to keep any parts from falling off, and leave this side low. Let's see if we can do this. Everything that works on a boat, these little kickboards or whatever they're called, are phenomenal. So the back of the engine's pretty rough in a lot of different spots. I'm going to lay this thing back on kind of the top of the transmission and over to the water muffler, and by bracing my knees tightly up against this, it doesn't, I can push myself up against my knee against the engine and against the side of the bulkhead of the wall to hold myself in an awkward position. Without this, there's no way you could do that kind of right on the rough part of the engine. So these things are great. So forgive me, this is a little bit hard to see, but you'll see here I was able to angle the starter up, and you see me positioning it in a way that's going to allow me to lift it up. It was actually a lot heavier than I thought it was, so I was looking for the right place to grab hold of it, and that was by putting my fingers in this pinion gear and slowly lifting it out between the opening. There's the starter, and that sucker's heavy. Luckily, the placement I had of the water circulation pump for the air conditioners, I built a shelf there. We enclosed holding tanks around in this engine room. We kind of rebuilt everything on the other side of the engine, and where the camera's sitting on the opposite direction of me, we actually have 32-gallon holding tank, two 16 gallons connected. On the side of that, I've mounted the water circulation pump for the air conditioner, the seawater strainer for the engine, the seawater strainer for the air conditioning system, a flushing system for the air conditioner. I have my 8D batteries on top of this floor right next to the camera. I've got the bilge pumps and the shower sumps. Behind that is the hot water heater. Water heater, I guess it's not really a hot water heater. There's no reason to heat hot water, but water heater. Spare bilge pumps behind it, and then on the shelf up above it, I actually have the compressor units for the Cool Blue Technotics refrigeration. So things are packed into this very small engine room, and you can see here's the back of the electrical panel. But
Surprisingly enough, this thing came out of there with about an inch to spare on either side. A little tough to work its way out, and I wasn't sure what this piece is, the spacer. I was really worried about dropping that down below. So the good news is I have it there. We've got the starter set up here, and there she is. Whew. It's hot in there. My mom got me this mug. Everyone is born left-handed. You turn right-handed when you commit your first sin. She got me this the first time I had an office, so 25 years ago or something like that. Ironically enough, when you hold it with your left hand, it's all for me. Anyway, that job wasn't as bad as I thought it was going to be. I really expected this to sort of be an impossible to reach task, and honestly, it wasn't that bad. Certainly awkward positions, but hey, listen, working on an engine on a boat is all about awkward positions. Nothing's convenient. So you sort of expect the worst, and you're pleasantly surprised if it's better. And that's really what this was. You know, this took me probably about an hour and 15 minutes, hour and 20 minutes, and that was to stop and film each section as I went. It was really kind of, there's not a lot of space in there, and there's nowhere to set a camera, so I was kind of holding a little GoPro at one point and trying to aim my headlight in the right spot because I had the power off for a bit. So it wasn't really a good way to do that. So what I would do is kind of loosen up a nut, and then I would hold the camera and with my hands try and show where I was loosening it so I could illustrate it for anybody that's trying to do the same thing. But it really wasn't that bad. This is a Perkins 4-108 engine, which is a 4-cylinder Perkins diesel engine. They're in a bunch of sailboats. You know, the old adage is if they're not leaking oil, they're not running, but they are great industrial machines. They use them in pumps and generators and all kinds of industrial applications. The thing runs like a champ, even with these starter problems we've had. You know, we'd fire the thing up at 6 in the morning and we would run it for 16, 18 hours non-stop without issue. So they're good motors. Anyway, I'm now going to clean up the starter a little bit. It's got a lot of grease and oil on it, as you can imagine. I have a couple of the nuts that I had taken off of the electrical connections. I'm going to put those back on so I don't lose where they go. And I want to take a closer look and just kind of inspect it. So I'll show it in a little bit more detail here in a minute. I'll tell you what, now that we finished part one of this video, the second part is going to be some close-ups of the actual starter off the boat so you can really kind of see what we were faced with, and then the replacement of it. And I'm going to do that in a second part of the video just so that the video is not too very long. So in the next video you'll actually see me put that on because frankly I don't have the replacement starter right now. So I hope you enjoyed this episode. Please do like it, please subscribe, share this channel and this video with your friends, and certainly if you have anybody ask you about replacing a starter on a Perkins 4-108 or any sailboat for that matter, by all means share this video link with any of your forum friends. So thanks from the Sailing Vessel Dream Chaser, but today working on the Sailing Vessel Last Affair, I do wish you safe and happy sailing. Bye now.
Don't forget to subscribe to our channel for weekly updates and like this video.